That was part of the Clarinet Quartet by David Matthews, and it comes from an NMC disc of chamber and vocal pieces, Winter Passions, that's one of the discs vying for the Contemporary Music Award in the 2011 Gramophone Classical Music Awards in association with Steinway and Sons. I'm James Jolly, Gramophone's editor-in-chief, and I'm joined by Peter Quantrill to talk about the 3 discs of new music in contention. Now, Poul Ruders, the Danish composer, is probably best known, I suppose, for his theatrical works, but these are 3 concert works: a piano concerto, number 2, the most recent work from 2009-10, then almost in complete contrast to that, from 2004, Bel Canto, which is a competition piece for a solo violin. And then there's the Serenade in the Shores of the Cosmic Ocean, which has a rather splendid part for accordion. Now, does this music appeal to you, Peter?
Ruders has, I was going to say, ploughed an eclectic furrow, but in that case, we might as well say very many furrows. I remember discovering his music through the Prom Commission, the BBC Prom Commission of the Symphony. At least it was called the Symphony then. There have been more since. And I remember being struck immediately by a voice that wasn't afraid both to draw on great traditions of the 20th century, not only from his native Denmark, but from, say, the Second Viennese School. There's an amazing third movement, actually, in that symphony that sounds like a wonderfully developed version of Farben from the 5 orchestral pieces by Schoenberg. Now, he's gone on since then to become even more eclectic, as indeed I think just the opening of the second piano concerto will let you know. It starts off in the most unassuming way and then suddenly dashes off. I'm especially taken, however, by the attractively, crazily titled Serenade on the Shores of the Cosmic Ocean, which was inspired by a documentary series by Carl Sagan. And this is music of certainly visionary intent, which can so often, in fact, fall flat on its face when you think about that kind of ambition. But he's restricted himself to accordion and string quartet. And in fact, it's the refinement of this piece that most strikes me. And I'm hoping that I'll hear more from Ruders. I couldn't stop playing The Shores of the Cosmic Ocean once I discovered it, and it made me want to go away, in fact, and watch the documentary series. And one can hear in Ruders' music some interesting analogue to Sagan's vast, ambitious attempt to chronicle the history of not just our world, but our universe.
The second disc is a collection of chamber and vocal works by David Matthews. This is on the NMC label. It covers quite a long period. It runs from the 80s up to the present decade. The most recent work is a song, Terrible Beauty, based on a text from Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. And this is, I think, a rather fascinating sort of conspectus of David Matthews sort of working on a smaller canvas, because we're used perhaps to his symphonic and string quartet output, which is quite substantial. But these are generally rather smaller works and I think rather moving.
Yes, in fact, although these are works on a smaller canvas, it's the glowing and variegated colours of a work like Terrible Beauty with its mixed instrumental ensemble that really hold the ear. He seems to have a very precise idea of how to match words with sounds. That sounds possibly a little banal, but I mean that in terms of individual little vignettes, tiny flourishings of colour that you get in Terrible Beauty, but then a work with an abstract title like Clarinet Quartet, but at least as vigorous, and you sense with a hidden narrative, where with the song cycles, they obviously have their texts. I like the fact that in Matthews' music, you always sense there's a story behind it. And again, a highly refined individual language. This is not particularly eclectic music. I get the sense of someone who has really fined down his vocabulary over the years in the orchestral music as much as in the chamber music. Most of all, however, I feel that we can hear that fining down of intention in the string trios, which require the most flexible of responses. And I'm so glad to see the Nash Ensemble's work in promoting new music being recognised here.
Now, the third disc, an NMC disc by one of the grand old men of British music, Sir Harrison Birtwistle. The disc takes its title from one of the works, Night's Blackbird. It also has a huge orchestral work, The Shadow of the Night from 2002, and also The Cry of Anubis. This is the Halle Orchestra under Ryan Wigglesworth. And I must say, sensuousness isn't necessarily the first word that I would use for Birtwistle, but there are some absolutely ravishing sounds on this record.
As well, I think, as different perspectives. This is what makes Birtwistle such a fine opera composer. That ability to control sound and to produce moments of the most intense terror, which are required in here just as much as indeed the ravishing sounds that you can hear in particular in Night's Blackbird, I think. But these works are really at the heart of some central preoccupations for Birtwistle. I go back to that theme of different perspectives. What he wants to do, I think, is explore the way that you can hear inside a character's dilemma, and also you can hear inside music, so that you're not just experiencing it from the outside, so that with The Cry of Anubis, you are with that jackal-headed god of the dead. That Cry of Anubis derives from his work on Second Mrs. Com. It's not a tuba concerto derived from the opera itself, but it pursues the same sort of lines, musical lines and expressive lines. There's another funeral march in The Shadow of Night, just as there are in previous Birtwistle works. Night and darkness and a certain preoccupation with mortality can be traced back to the very early great works of Birtwistle, such as Melancholia I. In fact, he refers to Dürer in the context of Shadow of Night as well. Night's Blackbird is then a sort of extended appendix to Shadow of Night, commissioned for the same people, Dochnani and the Cleveland Orchestra.
Who also commissioned Earth Dances all those years ago.
Exactly, and you can hear Birtwistle relishing the chance to write for a crack ensemble like that. It says a great deal about the Halle Orchestra's collective virtuosity, and I think probably about their growth as an ensemble in the last decade, that they can now face up to ensembles like the Cleveland Orchestra in contemporary music and find themselves in no way losing by the comparison. It's also very good to see the conductor Ryan Wigglesworth making an appearance. I think he's a fabulous young conductor who, like several of his contemporaries, is able to address himself to Beethoven and to Birtwistle and to everything in between with the kind of curiosity and sympathy that makes me feel very optimistic about the future of conducting in this country.
Part of The Shadow of Night by Sir Harrison Birtwistle, the Halle Orchestra, were conducted by Ryan Wigglesworth on that NMC release. And that's one of the 3 discs vying for the Contemporary Award in the 2011 Gramophone Classical Music Awards in association with Steinway & Sons. A reminder that the other 2 discs are the music of Paul Ruders, Volume 6 from Bridge, and a collection of chamber and vocal works by David Matthews, Winter Passions, also from NMC. Well, all will be revealed on October the 6th, when the winners are announced. For more information about the awards, go to gramophone.co.uk or subscribe to more of these podcasts at iTunes. My thanks to Peter Quantrill, and thank you for listening.